Officials in Tijuana, Mexico want to know why a pro wrestler died after a match against a former WWE star. Pedro Aguayo Ramirez was a Mexican wrestling star. He broke his neck during that bout on Friday night.
When we think of WWE wrestlers, we often imagine the larger-than-life personas, the epic battles in the ring, and the thrill of sports entertainment. But behind the characters they portray, some wrestlers have lived lives far darker than their on-screen roles suggest. While many have faced their share of controversies, a few have crossed a line that goes beyond the scripted drama, becoming involved in real-life tragedies that led to the death of another person. In this video, we delve into the shocking and unsettling stories of WWE wrestlers who have been involved in killings, exploring the circumstances that led to these life-altering events and the lasting impact on their careers and legacies. While wrestling might appear to be all fun and games for many fans, with its high-flying stunts, choreographed drama, and larger-than-life characters, there's a darker side that often gets overshadowed. Beneath the glitz and glamour, the world of wrestling can take a toll on its performers, sometimes leading to real-life consequences that are far from entertaining. What starts as a thrilling spectacle in the ring can at times spiral into situations with deadly outcomes, reminding us that the line between scripted drama and harsh reality can be dangerously thin.
Canadian Owen Hart, known as the Blue Blazer, was killed performing a pre-match stunt. As Raj Alawaliya reports, this time his fans, family, and fellow wrestlers are truly in shock.
Weighing 229 pounds, the Blue Blazer!
This was Owen Hart's world, the fantasy world of professional wrestling, where he was sometimes known as the Blue Blazer, an acrobatic superhero who beat up the villain.
There have also been instances where the violence didn't just stay confined to the wrestling ring, but spilled over into real life, unfolding far from the cameras and the roar of the crowd. These shocking moments of brutality occurred not under the bright lights of the arena, but in the privacy of their own homes, where the scripted battles gave way to genuine acts of violence. These offstage incidents reveal the troubling reality that some wrestlers' struggles extend beyond their public personas, leading to tragic outcomes in the most personal of spaces.
The wrestling world in shock today. Former champion Chris Benoit found dead in his Atlanta home along with his wife and young son. Police now treating the discovery as a double murder-suicide. World Wrestling Entertainment says Benoit failed to show for 2 live events over the weekend, and apparently at least one suspicious text message sent to friends prompted wrestling officials to send police to his house.
The reality is, while we admire and celebrate our favorite WWE superstars, there are some dark and inexcusable actions that can't be overlooked, including cases where they've taken someone's life. Despite the fame and adoration, these wrestlers have been involved in real-life incidents that resulted in tragic endings. Here are some wrestlers who have undeniably crossed that line and have been responsible for taking another person's life. Chris Benoit.
My name is Dennis Fagan. I run the security for World Wrestling, and one of our wrestlers that lives down there is missing.
Okay, what's his name?
Chris Benoit.
In June 2007, the professional wrestling world was shaken to its core by a tragedy so chilling and heart-wrenching that it left fans, fellow wrestlers, and the global community in a state of disbelief. Chris Benoit, a revered and respected figure in WWE, found himself at the center of a narrative so dark and unfathomable that it shattered the very image of the industry. Over the course of one harrowing weekend, the Benoit household in Fayetteville, Georgia, became the scene of an unimaginable horror. Chris Benoit, known for his fierce dedication in the ring, committed an unthinkable act, taking the lives of his wife, Nancy, and their 7-year-old son, Daniel, before ending his own life in a manner that stunned the world. The nightmare began on the weekend of June 22nd to 24, 2007. The Fayetteville police were alerted on Monday, June 25th, after WWE officials requested a welfare check, concerned by Benoit's unexplained absence from scheduled events. When officers arrived at the Benoit residence, they were unprepared for the scene that awaited them. Inside the home, they discovered a series of events that defied comprehension. Nancy Benoit's body was found in the upstairs family room. Her wrists and feet were bound, and a towel was wrapped around her neck, indicating she had been strangled to death. The brutality of the act was chilling, but the horror didn't end there. In another room, the lifeless body of 7-year-old Daniel Benoit was found lying peacefully in his bed. Though there were no visible signs of trauma, It was later determined that he had been suffocated, his young life tragically cut short by the man who was supposed to protect him. The final and most disturbing discovery was made in the home gym. Chris Benoit's body was found hanging from the steel cord of a weight machine, suggesting that he had used the equipment to create a makeshift noose, releasing the weights to strangle himself in a final act of despair. The methodical nature of the murder-suicide left investigators and the public grappling with the question of why, a question that would haunt the wrestling community for years. In the immediate aftermath, the shockwaves rippled through WWE and its fan base. On the evening of June 25, 2007, WWE aired a tribute show in Benoit's honor during the scheduled broadcast of WWE Raw, celebrating his storied career with matches and segments that highlighted his achievements in the ring. However, as the grim details of the tragedy began to emerge, the tone quickly shifted. WWE made the decision to retract the tribute, acknowledging the gravity of the situation and taking steps to distance the organization from Benoit's actions. The deaths at the Benoit household were first reported to fans of WWE via the company's mobile alert service Citation Needed and posted to its official website soon after. On its corporate website, the company released the following statement. World Wrestling Entertainment was informed today by authorities in Fayette County, GA, that WWE superstar Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and his son were found dead in their home. Authorities are investigating, but no other details are available at this time. Instead of its announced programming for tonight on USA Network, WWE will air a 3-hour tribute to Chris Benoit. Chris was beloved among his fellow superstars and was a favorite among WWE fans for his unbelievable athleticism and wrestling ability. He always took great pride in his performance and always showed respect for the business he loved, for his peers, and towards his fans. This is a terrible tragedy and an unbearable loss. WWE extends its sincere condolences and prayers to the surviving members of the Benoit family and their loved ones in this time of tragedy. Further deepening the tragedy, a Bible found among Benoit's possessions, which had been sent to his family in Canada, contained a haunting handwritten note that read, "I'm preparing to leave this earth." However, during a 2020 interview with Chris Van Vliet, Chris's eldest son David stated Chris didn't leave a suicide note and showed no indication that anything was wrong in their conversations prior to the tragedy. He also revealed Chris had planned for him to visit from Canada the week following the murders. This revelation offered a somber glimpse into Benoit's final thoughts and underscored the personal turmoil that likely preceded the horrifying events. The Chris Benoit murder-suicide remains one of the darkest chapters in WWE history, casting a long shadow over the legacy of a man once celebrated for his in-ring prowess. It forced a re-examination of the pressures and mental health struggles faced by professional wrestlers, leaving a lasting impact on the industry and those who followed his career. Rey Mysterio.
Officials in Tijuana, Mexico want to know why a pro wrestler died after a match against a former WWE star. Pedro Aguayo Ramirez was a Mexican wrestling star. He broke his neck during that bout on Friday night. Dramatic video shows him helpless in the ring for several minutes. As Omar Villafranca reports, the match kept going even after Aguayo was hurt.
The night of March 20th, 2015 was supposed to be another electrifying chapter in the storied career of Perro Aguayo Jr., a legendary figure in the world of lucha libre. The stage was set at a Crash promotion event in Tijuana, where fans eagerly anticipated a thrilling tag team match featuring Aguayo Jr. and his partner, Manik, against two formidable opponents, the iconic Rey Mysterio Jr. and the agile Extreme Tiger. The atmosphere was electric, as the crowd expected nothing less than a classic encounter, a showcase of the artistry, athleticism, and drama that define lucha libre. As the wrestlers prepared to enter the ring, the excitement in the air was palpable. No one could have predicted that this night would be etched in history, not for the spectacular feats performed in the ring, but for a tragedy that would cast a dark shadow over the world of professional wrestling. Perro Aguayo Jr., known for his intense demeanor and fierce competitiveness, stepped into the ring with his trademark snarl, ready to face Rey Mysterio Jr., one of the most revered luchadors of all time, and his partner, Extreme Tiger. The crowd erupted in anticipation, a cacophony of cheers for the high-stakes drama about to unfold under the vibrant lights of the arena. The The bell rang, and the match began, a dance of agility, power, and precision that captivated the audience. The wrestlers moved with fluidity and purpose, each maneuver choreographed to perfection. But as the match progressed, a pivotal moment occurred, one that would be replayed and analyzed endlessly in the days to come. Rey Mysterio Jr., a master of the ring, executed a head scissors takedown on Aguayo Jr., a move designed to set up his signature 619 finisher. However, fate intervened, and Aguayo Jr. did not land as expected. Instead, he tumbled outside the ring, a rare and alarming misstep for such a seasoned luchador. Undeterred, Aguayo Jr. quickly returned to the fray, only to be met with a drop kick from Mysterio, aimed at positioning him for the 619. Aguayo Jr. slumped over the middle rope, the setup for the 619 seemingly complete. But something was terribly wrong. His body was limp, and there was no response from him. Sensing that something was amiss, Manik rushed to Aguayo Jr.'s side, shaking him in an attempt to elicit a reaction. Conan, a veteran wrestler and Aguayo Jr.'s mentor, who was at ringside, quickly joined in, shaking Aguayo Jr. with growing concern. As the match continued around them, the other performers remained unaware of the severities of the situation unfolding before their eyes. Rey Mysterio, ever the professional, instinctively avoided making contact as he leaped for the 619, his years of experience telling him that something was seriously wrong. The referee's attention was finally drawn to Aguayo Jr.'s condition, and the match was brought to an abrupt end with Mysterio pinning Manik. However, the victory was hollow, overshadowed by the worry for Aguayo Jr. as the reality of the situation began to set in. The ring quickly became a scene of urgency and confusion. Personnel rushed to Aguayo Jr.'s side, initially believing he had simply been knocked out. He was carefully moved from the ring on a makeshift stretcher made of plywood, a decision made in the heat of the moment with the best intentions, but one that would later be scrutinized. Despite the frantic efforts to save him, Perro Aguayo Jr., at just 35 years old, had tragically passed away. The aftermath of Aguayo Jr.'s death was a blur of emotion, disbelief, and confusion. The initial diagnosis pointed to cervical spine trauma, believed to be the result of the drop kick that sent Aguayo Jr. into the ropes. However, the final cause of death was determined to be cardiac arrest due to a cervical stroke caused by 3 fractured vertebrae. The fractures had occurred at 2 distinct moments of impact during the match, and Aguayo Jr. had died almost instantly, a heartbreaking fact that offered little solace to his fans, family, and fellow wrestlers. In the wake of the tragedy, the Attorney General for Baja California initiated an investigation to unravel the events that led to Aguayo Jr.'s untimely death. The wrestling community held its collective breath, awaiting answers and hoping for closure. Although no criminal charges were filed, the incident cast a harsh spotlight on the medical protocols in place at wrestling events. The Tijuana Wrestling Commission faced intense scrutiny when it was revealed that the doctor on duty had been attending to other injuries backstage, delaying the response to Aguayo Jr.'s critical condition. The death of Perro Aguayo Jr. sent shockwaves through the wrestling world, a stark reminder of the physical risks inherent in the sport. It prompted a re-evaluation of safety measures and medical preparedness at wrestling events as fans and wrestlers alike mourned the loss of a beloved icon. His passing marked the end of an era in lucha libre and left an indelible mark on the sport, forever reminding us of the thin line between spectacle and tragedy. As the investigation into Perro Aguayo Jr.'s death unfolded, the wrestling fraternity united in grief, mourning the loss of one of their own. On March 23, 2015, Aguayo Jr.'s funeral was held in Guadalajara, and it was a poignant and somber affair that brought together friends, family, and fellow wrestlers to pay their final respects. Among those who stepped forward to honor him were 2 titans of the ring, Conan and Rey Mysterio Jr., both of whom had been close to Aguayo Jr. In a gesture of profound respect and mourning, they served as pallbearers, carrying their fallen friend to his final resting place. Rey Mysterio Jr., known for his legendary in-ring persona and masked identity, attended the funeral without his mask, a rare and powerful sight that underscored the deep personal loss he felt. This was not just the end of a wrestling career, but the loss of a close friend. Mysterio faced Aguayo Jr.'s grieving family not as a fellow wrestler, but as a man sharing in their sorrow. His presence, unmasked and vulnerable, reflected the gravity of the tragedy that had befallen them all. Mysterio's wife stated he went to the funeral as a human being, not a wrestler. Mysterio was devastated and faced Perro's family to give them his condolences. Perro's family told Rey Mysterio to not feel guilt. This was in God's hands. They understood completely. In an emotional and touching moment, Aguayo Jr.'s family, despite their immense grief, offered words of comfort to Mysterio. They absolved him of any blame, recognizing that what had occurred was a tragic accident, something beyond anyone's control. Their words, attributing the tragedy to a higher power, served as a testament to their strength and faith, providing solace not just to Mysterio, but to the entire wrestling community that was struggling to come to terms with the loss. The funeral was not just a farewell to a beloved wrestler, but a moment of collective mourning, healing, and unity for those who had loved and admired Perro Aguayo Jr., both in and out of the ring. Jimmy Snuka.
He was the high-flying superstar of wrestling, but now Jimmy Superfly Snuka is in the battle of his life.
The Superfly! Wow, what a shot!
The Hall of Fame wrestler has just been charged with the 1983 murder of his 23-year-old Brooklyn girlfriend, Nancy Argentino. Paramedics found Argentino bruised and gasping for air at an Allentown, Pennsylvania motel shortly after Snuka completed a wrestling match.
Nancy Argentino, a vivacious 23-year-old from Brooklyn, New York, found herself deeply entwined in the glamorous, yet grueling world of professional wrestling, not as a competitor, but as the companion of one of the sport's most electrifying figures, Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Argentino quickly became a constant presence in Snuka's life, traveling with him through the exhilarating highs and exhausting lows of his wrestling tours, especially during his performances in the Northeast. Their bond, while fraught with the inevitable challenges of a life lived in the limelight, seemed strong and unshakable. But this relationship, which had weathered the storms of fame and the pressures of the wrestling world, was shattered by a tragic event that would forever change both their lives. On a seemingly ordinary day in May of 1983, Snuka and Argentino checked into the George Washington Motor Lodge in Whitehall Township, Pennsylvania, not far from the Allentown Fairgrounds, where Snuka was scheduled for a World Wrestling Federation (WWF) taping. It was a routine stop for the couple, one of many they had made during Snuka's relentless travel schedule. However, this would be the last motel room Argentino would ever see. Within hours of checking in, a frantic call for help was made, and Nancy Argentino was rushed to the hospital with a serious head injury. Her condition was dire, and despite the efforts of medical personnel, she passed away, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a community in shock. The sudden and unexpected death of Nancy Argentino sent shockwaves through the wrestling world and prompted an immediate investigation by local authorities. As the last person to see her alive, Jimmy Snuka's account of the events leading up to her injury quickly became the focal point of the inquiry. Initially, Snuka told at least 5 individuals, including the first police officer on the scene, that an altercation had occurred, during which Nancy fell and struck her head. This version of events was consistent with the injuries she had sustained, and it seemed at first to explain the tragedy. However, Snuka's story soon began to change. He later claimed that Nancy had slipped and hit her head during a roadside bathroom stop earlier in the day, and that her injury had been an unfortunate accident. Despite the inconsistencies in his statements, Snuka maintained this account for decades, even defending it as recently as 2013.
So the girl, wanted to use the bathroom, So she got out and went to go use the bathroom, pulled over to the side. And I guess after she got done, she came back over like a stream that was there. She jumped and slipped and banged her head.
The case, however, remained shrouded in mystery, with lingering doubts and suspicions surrounding the true nature of what happened that fateful day. Argentino's death, which was initially ruled accidental, would later be revisited, leading to renewed scrutiny and questions about the events that led to her tragic demise. The story of Nancy Argentino and Jimmy Snuka serves as a haunting reminder of the dark side of fame and the sometimes hidden turmoil that can exist behind the scenes in the world of professional wrestling. Nancy Argentino had suffered traumatic brain injuries consistent with a moving head striking a stationary object, along with over 24 cuts and bruises scattered across her body. The coroner's report raised alarm bells, suggesting the injuries were indicative of maid abuse and strongly recommending that her death be investigated as a homicide. Despite the disturbing autopsy results and Snuka's shifting explanations, charges were not immediately filed. The case remained open but inactive as the wrestling world continued to turn, and Snuka maintained his celebrity status within it. In the days following Nancy's death, Snuka appeared at wrestling events seemingly unaffected by the tragedy that had unfolded. He continued to perform, his public persona untouched by the private turmoil that swirled around him. But behind the scenes, the gears of justice were grinding, albeit slowly. Nancy's family, devastated by their loss, sought answers and pushed for a deeper investigation into what they believed was a clear case of foul play. Their calls for justice, however, seemed to fall on deaf ears as the initial investigation stalled and questions lingered about the possible influence of the wrestling industry. Particularly, rumors began to circulate about the role of Vince McMahon, the powerful head of the World Wrestling Federation, WWF. Whispers of a mysterious meeting between McMahon, Snuka, and the district attorney's office fueled speculation that the wrestling industry's influence might have played a part in the investigation's apparent standstill. Yet no concrete evidence emerged to clarify McMahon's involvement or to explain why the case had seemingly gone cold. Frustrated by the lack of immediate legal action, the Argentino family turned to civil court, filing a wrongful death lawsuit against Snuka. The lawsuit resulted in a $500,000 judgment in their favor, but the victory was hollow. Snuka filed for bankruptcy, effectively ensuring that the family would never receive the compensation they were awarded. Despite the legal battles and the lingering cloud of suspicion, Snuka continued to work, his wrestling career seemingly untouched by the tragedy that had devastated Nancy's family.
Autopsy found the 5'7", 115-pound woman suffered from a fractured skull and 39 contusions and abrasions. Argentino's sisters pushed prosecutors to reopen the investigation decades after her death.
The case of Nancy Argentino's death remained a dark chapter in the world of professional wrestling, a story of potential injustice and unanswered questions that continued to haunt those who knew and loved her. For decades, the truth about what happened that fateful night in May 1983 remained elusive, a shadow hanging over the legacy of one of wrestling's most iconic figures. However, after 32 long years, the case took a dramatic turn in 2015 when Snuka was finally charged with the murder of Nancy Argentino. Despite the lengthy delay in justice, the charge brought a renewed sense of hope for those seeking closure. Yet Snuka's legal battle was far from straightforward. He claimed to have been suffering from dementia, arguing that he was unfit to stand trial. This defense raised significant questions about his mental state and his ability to participate in legal proceedings. Jose Utas Gonzalez.
This man, another wrestler named Jose Gonzalez, better known to fans as Invader 1, was arrested for the murder and awaits trial.
On July 16, 1988, at the Juan Ramon Luriel Stadium in Puerto Rico, Bruiser Brody was scheduled for a match against Dan Spivey. Before he could step into the ring, Brody's life took a tragic turn. According to Vice's Dark Side of the Ring documentary, tensions between Brody and fellow wrestler Jose Gonzalez had been brewing for some time. Gonzalez had previously expressed resentment towards Brody, even threatening him. The night of the incident, Gonzalez called Brody into the shower area, where a fatal altercation occurred. Brody was stabbed, and despite initial suspicions that the attacker might have been an enraged fan, it was later revealed that Gonzalez was responsible. Dutch Mantell and Tony Atlas, who were involved in the events, recounted that local authorities were initially unaware of Gonzalez's involvement, with Atlas being the key witness to identify him. The situation was further complicated by speculation that Brody was on the verge of acquiring a stake in the wrestling company, which could have threatened Gonzalez's position. The details of the confrontation remain unclear, but the tragic outcome was starkly evident. On July 16, 1988, Bruiser Brody was fatally attacked by fellow wrestler Jose Gonzalez during a chaotic scene in the locker room at the Juan Ramon Luriel Stadium. As Brody clutched his stomach, bleeding and in agony, Gonzalez stood nearby, shocked and confused. The aftermath was marked by panic and confusion among wrestlers and staff, with paramedics struggling to navigate heavy traffic to reach Brody. Once they arrived, they faced the challenge of moving Brody's large frame frame to the ambulance. Despite their efforts, Brody's condition worsened and he died from his injuries. In a separate incident on May 28, 2001, during a training session at the APW boot camp, a fatal accident occurred involving the Great Khali and trainee Brian On. While practicing a spine buster move, a miscalculation led to On's tailbone striking the mat, causing severe head trauma. Despite being rushed to the hospital, On's injuries proved fatal. His family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against APW owner Roland Alexander, claiming negligence, particularly since On had recently suffered a concussion. The case brought scrutiny to the training practices and the decision to allow On to return to training so soon after his previous injury. The world of professional wrestling, while celebrated for its thrilling performances and larger-than-life personas, has also seen its share of dark and tragic realities. The lives and deaths of these wrestlers remind us that behind the spectacle and entertainment, there are profound and often troubling stories. If you enjoyed this video, click on the ones showing on your screen now to watch similar content.